pigs gone wild. Researchers found that Texas has the worst feral hog problem in the entire country.
People across Texas are becoming desperate as more than 2 million wild hogs cause serious damage. Every year, they cost Texas agriculture about $119 million, while others around the country mostly watch, some even laughing. But then, something changed. Instead of fighting alone, communities began working together. They combined trapping, hunting, and monitoring into one plan. Rather than chasing the hogs away, they surrounded them. So, what helped Texas turn this growing problem into a well-organized fight? And why did authorities respond in such a shocking way? Beginning of the problem and level of destruction. In 2004, a farmer named J. Norman was out planting corn on his land in Fannin County. It seemed like a normal day, just another part of the farming season. But as he reached the end of one row and turned his tractor around, he saw something shocking. Right behind him, more than 100 feral hogs had gathered. They were already eating the seeds he had just planted. These were not seeds from the day before or even hours earlier. They had only been placed in the soil a few minutes ago. Yet the hogs had already dug them up and were feeding on them. Norman stood there in disbelief, watching the scene unfold. The animals were not acting randomly. They moved in a steady, organized line along the rows of corn, digging up each section one after another. In just a short time, hours of hard work and a lot of money were completely wasted. This moment was more than just a one-time loss. It marked the beginning of a much bigger problem for Norman and many other farmers across Texas. That year was the first time his farm had ever been damaged by feral hogs. Years earlier, he had heard of similar situations happening to other farmers, but he believed those cases were rare. Now the same problem had reached his own land, and it quickly became clear that it was not going away. From then on, Norman found himself replanting large parts of his fields again and again each year. He had to spend more on seeds, fuel, and labor, putting in extra time and effort just to recover from the damage. This wasn't caused by bad weather or plant disease. Instead, it was the result of clever and highly adaptable animals. The hogs had learned to recognize the sound and movement of corn planting machines. They didn't attack randomly. They watched carefully, waiting until the tractor had moved far enough away before moving in to feed. Norman soon realized he was not the only one dealing with this issue. What happened on his farm was just one example of a growing crisis spreading across the state. Feral hogs were becoming a serious threat to agriculture in Texas. According to the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, farmers and ranchers were already losing about $119 million each year by 2019 because of these animals. As time went on, the problem only got worse. By 2025, when both crop losses and damage to land and property were counted, the total losses had climbed to nearly $500 million. The level of destruction caused by these hogs is far greater than most people realize. It is not just a matter of broken fences or small garden damage. Entire fields can be destroyed overnight, leaving farmers with no choice but to start over from the beginning. This kind of loss is not only expensive, but also deeply frustrating for those who depend on their land for a living. What makes the situation even more alarming is that the problem is no longer limited to rural farming areas. Feral hogs have begun moving into cities as well. In places like Irving, they have been seen damaging lawns, public parks, and even school grounds. This shows how widespread and serious the issue has become. In farming, corn is the crop that feral hogs seem to prefer the most. While they also damage crops like soybeans and wheat, corn suffers the greatest losses again and again. In response, some farmers have tried switching to other crops such as milo or cotton, hoping to avoid the damage. However, this solution has not been very effective. Instead of solving the problem, it simply gives the hogs a new target. The real danger lies not just in how many hogs there are, but in how quickly they can adjust to new situations. These animals are highly intelligent and learn fast. They can change their behavior, find new food sources, and adapt to different environments with ease. This ability makes them especially difficult to control and turns them into a long-term challenge for farmers and communities alike. But how did the authority control the problem in the past? Was it effective? Let's take a closer look. Why traditional hog control methods fail? Norman did not give up easily. Like many farmers before him, he tried every common method people usually recommend for dealing with wild hogs. He set traps in different parts of his land, hoping to catch large numbers at once. He also used bait, placing food in specific spots to lure the animals in. At times, he even relied on trained dogs to chase the hogs away from his fields. For a while, each method seemed to help a little, but in the end, the results were always disappointing. The problem never truly went away. At best, these efforts only worked for a short time. The hogs would disappear for a few days or weeks, giving the impression that the situation was under control. But soon enough, they would return, just as destructive as before. What actually happened was simple. The hogs were not being removed completely. Instead, they were just moving to nearby fields when disturbed. Once things became quiet again, they would come right back. This created a frustrating cycle. Instead of solving the issue, the problem was simply pushed onto someone else. One farmer might get a brief break, but a neighbor would then have to deal with the same destruction. Over time, the hogs would spread out, affecting more and more land. It became clear that this approach was not a real solution. It was just delaying the problem and shifting it around. Trapping, in particular, sounds like a strong and effective method when you first think about it. The idea seems simple. Catch the hogs, remove them, and reduce their numbers. But in reality, it doesn't work as well as people expect. Norman has seen this firsthand, and he knows other farmers who have tried the same thing. Some of them manage to trap between 200 and 300 hogs every year. That sounds like a big number, and it certainly requires a lot of effort and time. However, even removing that many hogs barely makes a difference. The reason is the hogs' incredible ability to reproduce. These animals breed very quickly, and their populations grow at a fast rate. While farmers are removing hogs one group at a time, new ones are constantly being born. In just a few months, the number of hogs can return to what it was before, or even grow larger. This creates a serious imbalance. Farmers are using steady, step-by-step methods to reduce the population, but the hogs are multiplying much faster than they can be controlled. It is like trying to empty a bucket of water with a small cup, while more water is being poured in at the same time. No matter how hard you work, you can never catch up. To make matters even more difficult, feral hogs are not easy to fool. They are surprisingly smart animals. Over time, they learn from their experiences. If they encounter traps, they begin to recognize the danger and avoid those areas. If hunting becomes common in certain places, they change their behavior to stay safe. They might start feeding at different times, such as late at night, when humans are less active. They may also move through areas more carefully, avoiding spots where they sense risk. Because of this intelligence, the usual methods become less effective over time. What might have worked at the beginning slowly stops working as the hogs adapt. This means farmers must keep changing their strategies, which takes even more effort and resources. Yet even with these changes, the results remain limited. All of this shows a larger problem. The traditional ways of dealing with feral hogs are no longer enough. They were designed for smaller, slower-growing populations. But today's hog populations are larger, faster-growing, and more adaptable than before. The old methods simply cannot keep up with this new reality. For Norman and many others, this situation is both exhausting and discouraging. They are putting in time, money, and energy, but the results do not match their efforts. Instead of seeing real progress, they are stuck in a repeating cycle, fighting the same problem over and over again without lasting success. Why are people beginning to think the feral hog problem might finally be solved? Is the government adopting a modern method? Let's find out. Smart Trap System. Texas didn't stumble upon a magical gadget or a secret weapon to solve its feral hog problem. Instead, what worked was a clever system built in layers where each part supports the others. It wasn't about one tool doing everything. It was about combining methods so they worked together perfectly. Across the state, farmers and wildlife officials began using high-tech traps equipped with cameras and mobile connectivity. These aren't ordinary traps. They are smart traps that let people watch exactly what's happening in real time, right from their phones. Farmers set up large corral-style traps, often baited with corn. As the hogs move in to feed, they have no idea that every move is being watched. Cameras stream live footage directly to the operator's phone. This allows a trapper to see the entire group, the entire sounder, before doing anything. Once all the hogs are inside, a simple tap on the screen closes the gate. It's precise, instantaneous, and eliminates the guesswork. The same system was used by Texas Wildlife Services in Irving when hogs swarmed residential areas near Champions Park. Residents there had tried electric fences, but those efforts were temporary and often ineffective. The real difference came when people gained precise, real-time control. They could act exactly when the timing was right. Scale is where these smart traps truly shine. Traditional traps often catch only 1 or 2 hogs at a time, or close too soon, letting the rest escape. Smart traps, however, allow operators to wait until the entire group enters. This isn't about picking animals off one by one. It's about capturing the whole population in a single coordinated move. It's a big advantage, especially when you're dealing with large, fast-moving groups of wild hogs that can destroy hundreds of acres of crops in a single night. Of course, there's a cost. Setting up these traps isn't cheap. Installing one can run into thousands of dollars, and there are ongoing mobile fees and maintenance to consider. But for farmers, the expense often makes sense when compared to the alternative. Replanting a field of corn after a hog raid can cost roughly $400 per acre just for seed and labor. On a large farm, that adds up to tens of thousands of dollars. A single successful operation using a smart trap can prevent that kind of disaster, essentially paying for itself in one night. Because of this, neighbors often team up, sharing the cost and monitoring multiple properties together. It's a community approach, pooling resources to tackle a problem that no single farm can handle alone. Patience is another essential ingredient. These traps don't work instantly. Feral hogs need to be trained over the course of 10 days to 2 weeks. At first, the gates are left open so the animals can feed freely. Gradually, the gates are lowered until the hogs are comfortable and trust the setup enough to fully enter the trap. By the time the system is fully operational, the hogs are unaware that the moment of capture is near, which maximizes the trap's effectiveness. Even with all this technology, Texas knows that smart traps alone aren't always enough. In areas where hog populations spread quickly, something more aggressive is required. The goal is to move faster than the hogs can adapt, preventing them from learning and avoiding the traps. It's not just about technology, it's about strategy, timing, and understanding the animal's behavior. By combining high-tech monitoring with careful planning and community cooperation, Texas has created a system that gives farmers and wildlife officials a real fighting chance against a relentless and destructive foe. At its core, the solution is simple in concept, but sophisticated in execution. Watch closely, act precisely, and strike at the right moment. When every piece works together, the smart traps, the mobile monitoring, the patient training, and the teamwork, the state can finally regain control over an animal that has caused chaos for decades. No single tool is perfect, but when combined, they create a powerful, coordinated defense against the feral hog threat. What other method is the authority adopting? Could it be more effective? Let's take a closer look. The use of helicopter to hunt hogs. Some companies, like Helibicon, found a new way to fight invasive animals by using helicopters. Instead of relying only on traditional hunting methods, they transformed these helicopters into specialized tools for controlling feral hogs. Early in the morning, just as the sun rises, customers climb into these multi-million-dollar helicopters. With weapons loaded, they fly low over Texas farmland on a very specific mission: to find and remove feral hogs that are wrecking crops. Feral hogs are very different from other game animals like deer. Deer usually stay within a small, familiar area, making them easier to track. Hogs, on the other hand, are always moving. This constant motion, while helping them survive in the wild, also makes them vulnerable. Ground hunters, no matter how skilled, can only cover a few hundred acres in one night. Helicopter teams, by contrast, can move quickly over huge stretches of land, covering thousands of acres in just a few hours. In some coordinated efforts, they even manage to sweep through up to 400,000 acres, giving farmers a level of coverage that ground hunting alone could never match. From the sky, everything becomes clearer. Helicopter pilots can spot hogs' daytime bedding areas even when they are hidden deep in thick brush. They can identify the paths hogs use to move between feeding spots and track them as they cross creeks or navigate rough terrain that vehicles cannot reach. This aerial perspective gives farmers a detailed understanding of hog behavior and movement patterns, information that years of watching from the ground could not fully provide. It's like seeing the entire puzzle at once, rather than trying to piece it together bit by bit. Hunting from the air usually lasts about 2 hours and begins right at sunrise. This timing is important because it coincides with when hogs are most active, feeding and breeding. The cost for one person to join these hunts starts at around $4,000. In Texas, participants don't need a hunting license as long as the activity is on private land, and the landowner agrees. This legal freedom makes the process faster and simpler, allowing helicopter teams to respond immediately to hog problems without bureaucratic delays. The results of aerial hunting are impressive. Teams can eliminate hogs far more efficiently than traditional ground methods. However, even the people who run these hunts admit that helicopters alone are not a complete solution. Aerial hunting is powerful, but it works best as part of a bigger plan. For lasting success, pressure needs to be applied continuously, combining efforts from the ground with those in the air. Ground hunters, traps, and other strategies help ensure that hogs cannot simply move out of one area and cause damage elsewhere. Helicopters give farmers a bird's-eye view of the hog problem and allow them to strike quickly and effectively. They reveal hidden patterns of movement, identify safe spots, and travel corridors for the animals, and make it possible to cover vast, hard-to-reach areas. Yet, to truly manage feral hogs, aerial hunting must be one piece of a larger, ongoing effort. It is a powerful tool in the toolbox, but the overall system relies on constant coordination between ground teams and air teams, keeping relentless pressure on the hogs to reduce their numbers and protect crops over time. By combining technology, strategy, and persistence, Texas farmers are gradually gaining the upper hand against a species that has long been difficult to control. Helicopters may seem like a high-tech solution, but their real strength lies in complementing traditional methods, multiplying the impact of every hunt, and creating a smarter, more comprehensive system for managing feral hogs. Is this method giving the desired outcome, or is the government considering another option? Let's find out. Feral hog chemical control. Texas has recently approved the use of special war-grade poisons to help control the state's massive feral hog problem. These are not ordinary poisons that are scattered everywhere. Instead, they are carefully controlled chemicals used in a highly precise and regulated way. Think of it as a very targeted form of chemical warfare, designed to strike only the pigs causing destruction while keeping other animals and people safe. Only people who are trained and certified are allowed to use these poisons. There are strict rules in place. For example, the bait sites where the poison is placed must be fenced off so that livestock, pets, or wild animals like deer, raccoons, and birds cannot reach them. The feeders themselves are cleverly designed with physical barriers. Some use guillotine-style doors, others have magnetic mechanisms that require a lot of strength to open. Most animals can't handle these obstacles, but feral hogs can. However, the secret to this method is not just the poison. It's about how the poison is introduced. Landowners don't put toxic bait out right away. First, they use plain corn or other non-toxic food to get the hogs accustomed to the feeders. This allows the pigs to learn how to open the doors and eat safely. Only after the hogs are familiar with the feeding process do the landowners replace the food with poisoned bait. The process is gradual and carefully timed. It usually takes between 10 days and 2 weeks. During this time, the feeder doors are adjusted slowly, step by step, so the hogs must use more strength each time to reach the food. There's no rushing, no skipping stages. The method relies on patience, and it pays off. Once the hogs are comfortable and confident at the feeders, the poison is introduced, and entire groups of pigs, often 20 to 30 at a time, can be removed in a single coordinated effort. Meanwhile, researchers continue experimenting with new chemical options to make sure hogs don't learn to avoid the poison. This ongoing testing aims to keep the method effective in the long term. Of course, there is debate about the environmental effects and the ethics of using poison. Animal welfare advocates raise concerns, and scientists carefully monitor the impact on the ecosystem. But the data shows that when the program is carried out correctly, it works faster and more decisively than any method that relies solely on traps or ground-based hunting. The key to success isn't just the chemicals, it's the planning and careful deployment. The system is designed to exploit the pigs' natural behaviors. By gradually training them to approach and use the feeders, landowners ensure that the hogs can be controlled efficiently without harming other animals. The combination of feeder design, timed baiting, and controlled poison makes the method highly precise and effective. This approach is only one part of Texas's broader feral hog strategy. Farmers and wildlife managers also rely on smart traps, which use cameras and sensors to capture pigs, and helicopters, which can target large groups quickly over wide areas. Each tool has its strengths, but none alone could fully control the population. The poison program fills a critical gap, giving landowners a way to remove hogs swiftly and with minimal risk to other wildlife. Even with all these tools in place, Texas's fight against feral hogs isn't over. The state needed the combination of smart traps, aerial hunting, and chemical control to feel confident that the problem was finally being managed. When used together, these methods form a multi-layered system that can respond to the pig's unpredictable movements and high reproductive rates. Only then could officials truly claim that the feral hog problem was being brought under control. Could this be the turning point for feral hogs? What does it mean for Texas? Let's find out. the game-changing moment. All the methods Texas farmers had been using to fight feral hogs, traps, hunting, bait, and even helicopters, actually worked. The problem wasn't the tools themselves. For years, the efforts kept failing because farmers were trying to solve the problem alone. One farm might set traps, while the neighbor kept hogs around for fun hunting. One county might organize aerial hunts, while the next county did nothing at all. For the hogs, this wasn't a failure. It was an opportunity. These animals are smart and adaptable. Whenever one area became dangerous, they simply moved to another area where there was less risk. Gaps in the system meant the hogs could survive and keep spreading, no matter how effective one farmer or one county was. Over time, Texas officials realized that the key wasn't having more tools. It was using the tools in the right way. A method that works perfectly on a single farm becomes useless if surrounding lands aren't also controlling hogs. Even one patch of land left unprotected could undo months of work across a whole region. The fight against feral hogs wasn't just about individual action, it was about coordination. The real turning point came when Texas shifted from small, isolated efforts to a larger, coordinated campaign. Instead of each farm or county acting alone, multiple farms and counties began working together at the same time. They followed shared strategies, so the hogs faced constant pressure everywhere, not just in a single spot. Escape routes disappeared. Hogs could no longer move freely from one area to the next. This approach changed everything. Night hunting, strategic trapping, and chemical controls were all planned on shared schedules. Hog populations began dropping quickly, and the numbers stayed low. Crops that had once been destroyed were now safe. Farmers could finally see real results, and the economic damage started to reverse. Part of the success came from sharing expensive technology. Trap cameras, which previously only gave each farmer information about their own property, were now used together to track hog movements across multiple farms. This allowed farmers to predict where the hogs would go and respond immediately when herds shifted direction. Communication networks allowed teams to share real-time updates, making it possible to coordinate quickly whenever hogs tried to escape to less pressured areas. There were still vulnerable border zones where hogs could sneak back in. But even in these areas, the sustained, coordinated pressure slowed their recovery. Over time, as more counties and farms joined the campaign, fewer gaps remained. The system grew stronger, and the hogs had fewer safe places to survive. The shift from individual action to coordinated strategy created a new reality. Hogs were no longer just a problem for one farm, they were a challenge for the entire region. And by facing them collectively, Texas farmers finally began gaining the upper hand. This change didn't happen overnight. It required trust, cooperation, and careful planning. Farmers had to synchronize hunts, coordinate trap placements, and share information across property lines. But the payoff was huge. Crop losses dropped dramatically, and the economic strain caused by feral hogs started to ease. By thinking regionally instead of locally, Texas turned scattered, temporary successes into lasting results. Each farm became part of a larger system where the pressure on hogs was constant and relentless. Escape routes vanished, and the population of destructive feral hogs fell steadily. What does the future hold for feral hogs? Will the people be able to control them? Let's take a closer look. The road ahead for controlling feral hogs. As Texas farmers and wildlife managers started working together, the results of coordinated feral hog control became clear. But the state soon realized that reducing hog numbers wasn't the full solution. Even after successful hunts or trapping campaigns, the pigs would often come back. This led to a new approach, one focused not on killing hogs, but on stopping them from reproducing. Scientists and researchers began exploring ways to make feral hogs infertile. By targeting their hormones, they could prevent both males and females from having offspring without harming the animals themselves. Instead of short-term measures that only temporarily lowered numbers, this reproductive control promised a slow but steady decline in hog populations. Fewer babies meant no population rebound, breaking the cycle of constant trapping, shooting, and rapid recovery. The idea itself is straightforward, but putting it into practice is more complicated. Officials must figure out how to deliver contraceptives to enough hogs across large stretches of land, while ensuring that other wildlife doesn't eat the bait. Measuring success is tricky too, because counting every individual animal is impossible. Even so, Texas is investing in these programs, acknowledging that simply removing hogs physically isn't enough when millions of pigs roam the state. Meanwhile, technology is making traditional control methods far more effective. Thermal imaging allows hunters to spot hogs at night, locating entire groups in a single operation. Drones provide aerial surveillance, mapping where hogs move, where they rest, and where they gather. This turns hog management into a carefully planned, multi-layered strategy rather than a simple hunt. The results of these combined efforts came faster than many expected. Areas that had long been overrun with feral hogs began to show real change after just a few weeks of sustained action. In Irving, for example, hogs had been wandering near Champions Park and nearby neighborhoods. Coordinated efforts using smart traps, electric fencing, and organized hunting almost completely removed the hogs from these areas. Places that once showed daily signs of root damage suddenly became quiet. On farms, the improvement was even more noticeable. Jay Norman, who had seen massive crop damage in previous years, found that losses were now limited and manageable. Rather than having to replant hundreds of acres in a single season, he only had small, localized damage. Thermal night hunting during planting season helped prevent problems before they started, instead of reacting after the hogs had already destroyed fields. Across Texas, regions using this combination of methods, trapping, fencing, night hunting, and surveillance, saw hog populations drop by 60 to 70% within 2 years. Crop losses fell in step with these reductions. What had been a relentless and costly problem began to feel manageable. This coordinated approach also sparked new economic opportunities. A growing industry emerged to support feral hog control. Companies now provide smart traps, thermal imaging equipment, helicopter hunting services, operator training, and carcass recovery and processing. What was once considered just a burden on farmers and rural communities started becoming a source of jobs, revenue, and large-scale solutions. By blending short-term removal methods with long-term reproductive strategies, the state is finally getting ahead of the problem. So, what do you think about the way Texas is dealing with feral hogs? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.